I walked in the door and there were leaders in our organization, leaders on the board, leaders at the staff level who had recognized that if we as a meat and poultry industry weren't going to begin to acknowledge that customers and consumers were asking for things that we weren't yet comfortable providing.
Welcome to MeatsPad. In collaboration with the American Meat Science Association, it's a platform dedicated to share breakthrough knowledge that is accessible to the global meat industry. On each episode, you'll have the opportunity to listen and learn from meat specialists and professionals about the whole meat industry. This podcast is brought to you by the U.S. Meat Export Federation, Ultrasource, equipment and supplies for the meat and food industry.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. My name is Francisco Najar. I'm your host today. I'm very excited about this interview that we have today, and it's going to be a little bit different in a way that we'll be starting some series in actually in the entire of 2025. But we wanted to at least get a kickoff before we end this year, and we have Katie. First, before we introduce our guest today, how you doing, Katie? How's almost Christmas?
It is. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. My name is Kathleen Wolff, and I'm here on behalf of the Women's Meat Industry Network. I am the current chair of the Professional Enrichment Committee.
Perfect. I think we can start right on this episode. We have a bunch of questions, and we were just before recording talking to the person we're interviewing today, Juliana Potts. She is the current president and CEO of the Meat Institute, and I think we can start right on. Welcome, Juliana. You're super busy, but getting the time for us to visit today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled. This is a great opportunity.
Perfect. You were recently nominated. I think that could be something that we can start. I think it's something to be very proud of. The nomination of the most impactful woman of the year. That's amazing. How does it feel?
That was so awesome. There is nothing quite like being recognized by your peer group. It is just kind of took my breath away to be in a room full of amazing women in the meat and poultry industry, and to hear some of the things that were put on the nominations it was really terrific. I can't say enough about the Women's Meat Industry Network and what it has meant to so many of us in the last several years, and how quickly and organically it has come together. And so it was a very special award. I think my mom wishes she had known ahead of time so she could have come and seen me get. I don't get many awards, so it was a big deal.
We've actually heard Sharon Beals tell this story that you were so excited and you commented that you've never won an award before like this. So huge congratulations, Juliana. You certainly deserve it. And I want to start our next question to kind of dig into your background. So you began your career as a law associate, and you were focusing on environmental law. You served as a general counsel for organizations like the American Farm Bureau Federation before you took on some leadership roles. And you even clerked for a short period early on in your career. Can you tell us more about your background and what inspired you to transition from law to these leadership roles in the meat and agriculture industry?
Sure. It's an interesting thing when you talk with people who are more mature in their careers, and you ask them, anybody, how many of you in this room, wherever you are standing at a podium, are on plan A, right? The thing that you thought you were going to do when you graduated from college or graduated from high school and decided you were going to throw your hat in the ring for a position or something. And I'm such an example of that. I didn't graduate from college knowing that I wanted to go to law school. That developed a few years after I got my first job. And what I got my first job in was kind of happenstance. I needed a job. My father knew somebody in agriculture policy in Washington, D.C., and I went to answer the telephone. And so, it's sort of amazing because when I got my feet wet in Washington for a few years as a professional, I loved agriculture. I loved the people. I love the policy, that not just the people working issues here in Washington, but also the people we represented. And so when I decided to go back to law school, it wasn't that I was necessarily going to go into agricultural, law or leadership positions, but I found my way back because of those early relationships. And I think in terms of making the transition from law into, leadership and organizations, it was very natural, because in the practice of law, whether it's corporate or litigation or whatever, you're taking on other people's problems to solve them. Now, not everybody thinks that that's what lawyers do, but really, essentially, if there's a through line for everything in my career, it is just helping other people solve their problems. And there's really nothing more energizing for me than thinking about doing that on behalf of an entire industry sector. So it may not seem natural, from the outside, but as I have evolved through various roles, that's what it's really all about. I have a passion for making things better, and solving sort of some challenges and looking for opportunities.
I think we were discussing a little bit before we started recording about, like, I have 3 girls, and I'm trying to do my best of instilling and motivate them to, like, you can do whatever you want to do, basically. And I think I would like to know from your perspective. And I mean, as I was saying, you're the current CEO of the Media Institute. So how do you balance the skills that you learn? I mean, and you can name some of the roles that you have, but what made you say, okay, I want to take this role as CEO? And I think it's good to take it as an angle coming from a woman perspective, because we're in the industry, there's a lot of men. I was just saying, like, even so in other more countries. And I think what made you say, I will take it?
I that's a really good question. I have I think it's because in the roles that I have had and the things that have brought me satisfaction and joy, in my career and building my career, it's the times when I have really been pushed into the deep end or jumped into the deep end, because you can be either one, um, have been the most gratifying. So when you have the opportunity, and when I've had the opportunity to maybe be like, oh, I don't think I can do that because it feels like I'm not ready. And then you somehow, whether it's a mentor or a need, a personal need, you make a change and you dive in, and it's not always fun and it's not always easy, but when you finally, when it finally clicks and you realize, yeah, I can do this, it's growth. I mean, that's just really the definition to me of personal and professional growth. And so what I try, and I'm so glad you brought up your girls, what I try to do when I talk to people who are maybe newer in their careers than I am, is if they're coming to me and asking, I've got this opportunity or I want to have an opportunity, how should I go about it? And I'm always about the go for it. There's really not a lot that you can do to mess up your career at the early stages, except if you can't be trusted, or you have a problem that is something that is inherent in a character flaw, rather than you work your hardest. And even if you lose a job or you don't like what you're doing, you can always make a change. And so while it may feel like there are these great risks or I've got to get farther ahead than I think I do, it's all about building skills along the way, taking the next step and the next step and the next step, rather than being, like I don't know if I can do this. I always say, just try it, try it, and do it.
I love hearing your very grounded and realistic approach to our careers, because they are totally not a ladder, and they've been described as matrices a lot more lately, and you never know what's going to come your way. And I love hearing that. It's funny that we have so many daughters. I as well have 3 girls at home.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's the future.
They are the future, 100%. And your comments there just really resonate with how you were described in your nomination form: visionary, tenacious, collaborative. And your initiatives, including the Protein Pact and Emerging Leaders, are just remarkable examples of your visionary leadership. And I'd like to talk more about these, and starting with the Protein Pact, which was a groundbreaking initiative in terms of transparency and sustainability. So can you tell us more about the Protein Pact, what inspired you to create this program, and how you brought it to life? Because it's just truly amazing what you were able to do with that.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's very much a whole host of people working together to make something come to life, as you said, like that. Really, there was a need in the industry when I started at the Meat Institute in 2018. I walked in the door and there were leaders in our organization, leaders on the board, leaders at the staff level, who had recognized that if we, as a meat and poultry industry, weren't going to begin to acknowledge that customers and consumers were asking for things that we weren't yet comfortable providing. So transparency being a major part of that. And so really what Protein Pact, PACT, for people, animals, and the climate of tomorrow, really what it is, it's an opportunity to build trust with consumers by continuously getting better and better at what we do as meat and poultry processors and the supply chain that we partner with. So our livestock producers on the one side and our customers on the other. We all have to be kind of working together on improving how we do what we do across multiple areas. And so when I came to the organization, the first sort of conversation that I had with some of our leadership was, we need to get after this. And having come from the American Farm Bureau, the general farming organization, but I'd been in agriculture policy and for a while. We were 8 years into that conversation. And so I thought, I may never have been in a meat plant before, but I do know something about getting consensus, building momentum, and taking a challenge like this industry had and beginning to put some teeth into what do we do about it. So it helped very, very much that we had a tremendously active and engaged group on our board who really said, we want to provide the Meat Institute staff a mandate to go figure out how to build trust with consumers. And so we began the process, as one does in a management situation, where you put the people in place, you put the structure in place, you put the strategy in place, and you try to get the funding, to begin to move the thing along. So proudly, 6 years later, I think we really do have a lot of momentum, and we have something that we point to now where the industry is not sitting still, hasn't been sitting still, is getting better and better and better every year, across, everything from food safety to worker issues, to animal welfare, to environment, to our nutrition and human health. So it's very, very broad. It's very, very comprehensive. And the more we talk about it especially with our customers in retail and food service, the more we know we're on the right track for how we're, living into, that trust building initiative that we started talking about 6 years ago.
I think the timeline there is just truly remarkable that you were able to light a fire and get things going. To walk in and recognize the need immediately is just
timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
And the thing, we have a phenomenal staff here at the Meat Institute. I cannot say enough about the dedication and the passion. We're remarkably stable, very, very low turnover here. Many people that I work with, here at the industry level have been with the Meat Institute for years and years and years, if not decades in a few cases. And rather than being kind of old and set in our ways, I would like to think that we have demonstrated a kind of nimbleness and an adaptability as an industry organization that is very, very important. We cannot rest on our laurels. We can't do the same thing next year that we did, this year or the year before and expect that we're going to be successful. And success for us is providing value and relevance to our members, helping them thrive, be successful, creating that business environment. And so every year is different, and certainly coming up on this new administration, we're going to have a lot of things to talk about and how we manage, some very different policy waters. But Protein PACT has been very consistently something that has grown in importance because it speaks to a business need, an operational excellence need that everybody I know in the meat industry wants to be the best they can be, and maybe make a profit at the same time. So that's what we're here to help with as well.
The mission of the USMEF is to increase the value and profitability of the U.S. beef, pork, and lamb industries by enhancing demand for their products in export markets to a dynamic partnership of all stakeholders. Simply put, USMEF is putting U.S. meat on the world's table.
I kept thinking, and this week I have a few meetings and with people like from work. Had some people from Mexico doing some testing, but something that you mentioned about just you have to get it done. I mean, perfection does not exist, and I think I see as a meat industry leader, and as I didn't have the honor to know you and meet you before, but everything that you're saying makes me think that you go, and I'm trying to be that person as well. Like if you try for something to be perfect, you're never gonna just make it. I mean, you will never do it because something is gonna be missing. Coming from that, I think, how do you structure these programs in a way like, there is a need, right? But the most important thing is to start it. And sometimes by starting it very hard, very, very quick, sometimes, and I say that to myself as well, sometimes we lack a structure and we try to structure along the way as I don't know, maybe you can tell me from your experience how you go about creating these programs, and do you plan on doing it? Do you start it and then you structure? How do you start?
Yeah, how do you start? It's a really good question for pretty much anything in our business world or anything in our personal life as well. And I think what you said is perfection is unachievable. We're never done. So if we can accept that we're never done with improving and growing our businesses, growing our careers, growing our personal relationships with our families, whatever it is, if you're never done, then starting is just a matter of just jumping in and beginning to swim. And my role, I think, because I mentioned, especially with Protein PACT, it really has been, my job has been to try to get people rowing in the same direction, right? It's providing enough clarity and enough direction to get folks going in the same direction, and then giving people, staff, our board, members of our companies who have participated on numerous task forces and committees to put the framework together for reporting so that we know we're making progress. Really, it's to empower people to get out there and do it and not be afraid of failing, really. I mean, to be able to say to a staff person who might have had a different experience in the past, I'm not going to stand over your shoulder and watch and make a decision on your behalf. So don't come to me unless you really want me to tell you something. You go do it. I will be happy to talk through, the parameters that I see. But then if something goes wrong, I've got your back. I will go and talk with the board or talk with a group. And so that's the way that we, I think, have been able to take off in certain directions. Maybe we've needed to change. Maybe we've evolved in certain other ways that we didn't see in the beginning. And I'll give you a specific example of that. We spent a lot of time in the beginning, and we still do, really wrapping our arms around the producer organizations and what they are doing in some of the roundtables regarding environmental impacts. And that was all great work. But at some point, we were ready because we had enough of a database of materials that we were putting together, that our member companies had decided to report in on, their progress and their metrics across all the different focus areas of Protein PACT, that we were finally ready to go and talk with customers. So think of, the restaurants, the QSRs, Burger King and Chipotle and McDonald's and Yum on the one hand, and Sam's Club and Albertsons and Aldi on another. And they were really interested in what we were doing. And I would say that when we started out, that was not necessarily the goal. But as we went through the process and we saw all the ways in which Protein PACT began delivering results, even if the results were not easily quantified maybe outside, but the very fact that we had, for the first time ever, an industry level report on what we were doing across all these different sustainability areas for the meat and poultry industry, that was really something. And then it began to be about people understanding and making decisions within their own companies on the basis of the information that they were receiving back from the database. If I put my metrics in and I get a dashboard back out that says, here is how I am comparing on these different attributes to my peer group, well, that was actionable intelligence if you had the willpower, to really work on that. So I think that back to just dive in and start swimming, and if you're on the right track, your constituents will let you know that. If you're on the wrong track, you'll know that pretty fast too. And so we keep testing and retesting our hypotheses. Are we doing what the industry wants us to do? And I think we're in another time period right now where everyone is asking the same question. What are we doing in all these different areas that we look at to ensure that we're doing for the industry what it needs? Food safety being a good example. We've had a lot of food safety conversations recently. Animal welfare, another one. Are we constantly reiterating, these are the things that we need to be doing and we need to be looking at for education, for research, et cetera. And so it's given us a lot of good data and good conversation about how to help the industry, our members, make those improvements through the offerings that we have here at the Meat Institute. That was a very long answer. But as you can see, I get very excited about it. I'm very passionate about the work that we do. to assist our companies that is really about, education. It's about coming together and having a listeria workshop every year for the last 20, however many years, twice a year. It's about animal handling conference. It's our food safety conference. All of these things we've been doing at the Meat Institute for a long, long time. That they are also the things that we are measuring and talking about in terms of protein pact is just a real bonus.
I mean, your passion is very evident. I mean, it comes through in your voice and your inflection, and it's so clear that your leadership emphasizes diversity and inclusion in the meat industry, and you're obviously taking a vested interest in development programs. And so I wanted to ask you more about the Emerging Leaders Program.
Yes.
I've heard wonderful reviews of this. And so I was hoping you could tell us more about some of your personal values and experiences that drove you to create this program and help foster that sense of community and empowerment, particularly for women and future leaders.
It is essential to have, nobody can do anything by themselves. You have to have a peer group. You have to have mentors. You have to then, I think it's incumbent on each of us to reach back and mentor the people who are coming up in their careers, maybe a little later than we are. It is even more important, I think, when you hear objectively from our companies, and I've been in agriculture, and forever. Objectively speaking, there's a bit of a fall off between, when women first join a company and they're new in their careers. Then there's the middle part, right? The middle manager part before you get to a position maybe in the C-suite or in leadership high up in the company. And it's that middle part where I have been told that, people drop off. This is true in every industry organization that I have been affiliated with, law practice, higher education, other issues. People have, they have many, many reasons, but that's what we, I think, have an objective, trying to address with the mentoring program in women for sure. But in general, with our emerging leaders, which are a tremendous group of self-selected, right? People who say, I want to connect with people in the industry. I want to learn more and I want to become a leader in my industry, not just my company, but in the industry. It's about that lateral and also mentoring kind of relationship to talk out loud about challenges that one is having and do it in a way that there's not risk to you in your own career at your own company with your own boss, which can be a good thing. It can be a good relationship or it can be not so good a relationship, but that outside opportunity is tremendously helpful. So for myself, I have had the most wonderful mentors in my career, and they have ranged from the judge that I clerked for to, a partner at a law firm that I wrote memos for when I was just a baby lawyer, to people in the meat industry once I got here 6 years ago at, I don't know how old I was, but very far along. And I had not been, I had grown up in the industry. And so people like Barry Carpenter, who was the CEO of the Meat Institute before I got here, and he really put his arm around me and he said, let me help you meet the people you're going to, be working for and do it in a way where I'm going to, ensure that you understand kind of the background and the history of not only the organization, but of many of the relationships and the companies within the membership. So incredibly important. And if we don't, as leaders, model that behavior, if we don't create those opportunities, then shame on us, because we've taken advantage of them, hopefully, And we need to create those opportunities for others so that we don't lose people, women or men, in the middle parts of their careers because they just don't see how to get from here to there.
I would ask next, having had a successful career in both law and agriculture and touching on that middle management level, it is so extremely challenging. From personal experience, that's about the time when people start having families and starting to raise children, and you get faced with a lot of hard challenges. And do I stay at a company? Do I completely change paths? You know all too well, facing some of these big decisions of not just changing company, but literally changing industries. I was going to ask for you to touch on, what are some challenges what are the biggest challenges that maybe you personally faced or that you see the future generation facing? And how do we encourage women at any point in their career to navigate some of these traditionally male-dominated industries?
Some very specific things that I think are available to any woman in any company of any size, and that kind of formally would be an employee resource group. If y'all have heard that term, I think having the ability to say as a matter of your HR says employee resource groups are a great thing, and you can have one for this group over here or that group over there, and those can be really, really effective. If that's not really an option, because that creates sort of a peer group, and a peer group can provide support to one another when things are really tough. I think another way to think about it is, there are so many differences now in just socially post-pandemic that are available to us that maybe weren't available before. And if you have a partner, if you have a husband, a wife, a partner who is who's in there with you, and who's thinking about these things, that has definitely changed since I was. I hope my husband doesn't hear this because he was great, but it definitely socially, and I know because of my friend group, so many people have sort of stepped off the bus at that point when we all started having kids. I think that has changed a lot, but it definitely requires a great deal of communication, between partners about how important it is to not make that be the point at which only one of the partners is really kind of making that sacrifice. The other thing is just and by flexibility, post pandemic, there are a lot of opportunities now for different work weeks, different types of schedules and things that really didn't exist before we went through that big change. Not for everybody, again. So, it kind of gets back to strength in numbers, finding those people within your company who are willing to go to bat for you for, individual accommodations or in groups, that this would make this entire cohort of women at a certain age, certain place in their careers, able to stay with it longer. And I think men or women in the C-suite would say, amen, let's take a look at that. It's just a different period now. And I think people really, really do want to look for ways to make it easier to get past that very difficult part. The last thing I'll say about it, I'm sorry, the last thing I'll say about it is when you have a personal crossroads, you don't think you can do it anymore. Take a minute, take a break, take a time off, just don't make any decisions when things are the toughest. get through a hard patch, take a deep breath, and then think about your strategy for how it might work for you, and maybe some changes, that you haven't even considered would come to you in that period of time. Because I know I certainly have wanted to not continue at particular times when it was so hard and we lost childcare, a nanny or a babysitter moved away, and you're white knuckling it, for a time, and you think, I just can't do this anymore. If you give yourself a moment and you try to get through it, then make a decision, and you'll make the right one. These are things that are really hard to talk about because they're very subjective, first of all. One of the things that I have found that makes my heart rate go down as well, so there are hopefully two benefits, is to breathe and slow down when you talk. When you're in a meeting, when you are at the podium, when you are making yourself heard and not just saying something, but you really want to be heard, slowing yourself down inside your own head, I think, and it maybe even a tone of voice, that comes out to follow that breathing and the slow and steady way that you speak, gets people's attention, and it can really deepen, I think, your own confidence in what it is you're saying. Weirdly, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before, and I don't think I've ever said that out loud. So I don't know if that's effective or not. It's just something that I know for me, when I am at my best in a room full of people, at a podium, sitting at the head of a table, managing a meeting, it's really trying to not get it all out there so fast, not being afraid that I'm going to be cut off, but just making sure that how my tempo and my reaction to being interrupted is what it needs to be. And going back and, reminding someone that you still had to finish your thought can also establish that you won't be shut up, that you won't be cut off. And I do think that as a matter of leadership and presence in those situations, not sitting back and not sitting in the back of the room either, sitting at the table, leaning in and ensuring that if you don't get your point across the first time, that you go back to it again. You may not be successful the first time, but I'll guarantee you it'll give you more confidence the more you do it.
Wow, this is a lot of good information. I was not expecting to be like this, that very deep in a good way, because sometimes we focus a lot on the operation and sometimes in the science, but this is very humane, because that's what we deal with, right? We humans. And I would like to have, I think more time, maybe a part two. Maybe at RMC we can get way more questions, but I would like to wrap it up in just as maybe two things that you can recommend women. I think I want to do it in 2 or 3 things, but the the most important characteristics or values that you see in future women coming in this industry.
Oh boy. One of the things that maybe it's not a value, maybe it is, but one of the things that I think is incredibly important for this whole conversation is that women stick up for other women. That when you are in the situation that Megan was just talking about, or I was just talking about with Megan, when you are in the room, you're at the table, make room for other women to be there too, make room for other women to speak, and do your damnedest not to tear down other women in your organization. It's really, really important that women stand up for other women in our professional lives. Number 2, I would say dive in. I think that's another theme of this conversation, maybe, that you take a risk, and you find people in your life, in your work life, outside of your work life, that can be your cheerleader for diving in. If you've got a parent or a spouse or somebody who is, that might be a little risky, find someone who will argue the opposite thing. And then, you have good inner voices, a good inner voice to intuit what you need to be doing at this point in your life. You're the best judge of that. But find someone outside of yourself that will give you that kind of validation for jumping in and taking the risk. And that's all I got today. We can come back and talk 100 more hours about all these topics, because I think it's wonderful to just be having this conversation. I think it's really fantastic. So I appreciate you all letting me opine on all of these issues.
Well, on behalf of the Women's Meat Industry Network, we want to thank you for your time today. And also, you have been a champion of this organization from the get-go. And we deeply appreciate the in-kind relationship that we have with the Meat Institute and everything that our two organizations do to support one another. And as you were making your last remarks there, I was thinking about something that they said on our all-member meeting, which was just yesterday. They made a comment about, we need to continue to straighten each other's crowns. And
Yes.
I loved hearing that on the call, and just your reiteration of that sentiment here today, I think is a perfect way to end this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Great conversation. I look forward to it again sometime.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, what a good time to just to wrap up this episode and this year. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and we'll
Thank you.
continue to give this.